I'm Dana Scott of AZ Central Sports, here with Jeff Metcalf, here to talk about the 40th anniversary of ASU and Arizona joining the Pac-8, which became the Pac-10 in the 1978-79 academic year. Talk to me about what happened with the negotiation process kickstarted by USC's president, John Hubbard.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, Dana, because when you think about it, it seems like a no-brainer, right? Okay, we're going to leave the WAC and we're going to go into the Pac-8. Why would you not want to do that? But there was a lot more reluctance on ASU's end of it, and the story I wrote and the research I did, which actually was interesting to me because I wasn't here then, really kind of explains why ASU was reluctant to do it. ASU was the top of the mountain in the WAC right then. They had just had a 12-0 football season. Frank Kush was one of the dominant personalities, not only in sports, but just in the entire state. Frank didn't want to do it. The ASU president didn't want to do it, but U of A did want to do it. And that's what kind of propelled the whole thing forward, was U of A pushing ASU basically into the Pac-8.
There's something to be said about the underlying rivalry between U of A and ASU and their resistance to want to move into the Pac-8, not wanting to move into the Pac-8 versus Arizona, who was willing and able to do it.
Well, they were at a little bit different place in their athletics and academics. At that point, U of A really had more academic prestige, maybe more clout with the regents. The USC president, whom you mentioned, was very close with the U of A president. They were kind of driving this whole thing. The Pac-8 wanted at that point, the football revenue you could get from game days was really important. And they wanted to get the two Arizona schools in there to help drive revenue on game day. That was actually more important than television revenue in those days. They knew they were going to get a big payday when they came to ASU, and somewhat when they came to Arizona, because ASU was one of the top teams in the country at that point. I can't stress enough how important Kush was. And then the other thing that was critical is the Fiesta Bowl had been basically created for ASU to have a bowl landing spot. And there were a lot of people here locally that didn't want ASU to leave the WAC. They felt like they would be doing a disservice to the Fiesta Bowl.
Right. And the Western Athletic Conference seems like it was basically the backyard for ASU, and they were turning their back on their own backyard.
Yeah, that was kind of the perception. The way it turned out, it didn't work that way because it kind of freed the Fiesta Bowl to bring in teams beyond the WAC after ASU left. And then the Fiesta Bowl actually grew to what it is today. So that was kind of an unfounded fear, but that was definitely a fear at the time.
So this deal was already in place before it possibly fell apart. Tell me how that actually was able to come together, and who were the key players at that?
Well, as they moved into this decision-making process was actually throughout 1976. And as they got to the fall of 1976, all the pieces seemed to be in place. They went to a meeting in San Francisco in December, and it was supposed to be kind of a rubber stamp type thing. But then what happened was the Stanford president and the Washington president suddenly dug their heels in and said, we don't really want these two Arizona schools in the Pac-8. Now everybody was gathered, the media was there, all they were going to do was go down in the lobby and announce this. And then they had kind of threats, almost to the point of where USC said, if you won't honor your word from earlier, we're going to leave the Pac-8. So there was kind of like this internal struggle among the Pac-8 schools where they had to get Stanford on board. And then once they got Stanford on board, Washington was the only lone holdout. And Washington realized they couldn't hold this out on their own. It'd be too much backlash against them. And so it was finalized at the last minute.
All right, thanks for watching. Make sure you read Jeff's article about the Pac-8 and ASU joining, as well as Arizona. Also, make sure you subscribe to azcentral.com and also our YouTube channel at AZC Sports.